Hello and welcome to the Last Looks podcast, a show where we catch up with talented hairstylists and makeup artists in the film and television industry. We'll pick their super creative brains and find out all the good stuff. Join me, your host, Jamie Lee, in finding out what's what in the hair and makeup departments around the world.
And now, our feature presentation.
Today on the Last Looks podcast, I'm speaking with makeup designer Valli O'Reilly. Valli has an incredibly impressive filmography. She won an Oscar for her work on Lemony Snickets, a series of unfortunate events, and then a BAFTA for Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. Valli shares the story of her beginnings as a makeup artist and how she found herself with a makeup brush in her hand. She shares some of her favourite projects that she has worked on throughout her career and all the wonderful people she has worked with and met along the way.
Pictures up.
Last looks. Rolling.
And action.
Welcome to the Last Looks podcast, Valli.
Good morning, Jamie Lee.
Good morning. Hey, now I would like you to finish this sentence for me, okay?
Sure.
Once upon a time, there was a child named Valli, and when they grew up, they wanted to be...
Probably a sculptor.
A sculptor?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome. So how, as a child, did you kind of know that that was a thing? What kind of inspired you in that direction?
Well, I was always interested in art. I used to, draw all the time as a kid, and I used to make my own, comic strips, and I used to make my own board games, and back then kids used plasticine. I used to make all sorts of different things, but then they would just dry out and fall apart. They weren't proper clay.
Yeah.
And my mother had a friend when I was about 13 that was showing me pictures of the sculpting class that she went to.
Oh, cool.
And so I lit up, and I said, wow, to my mom, I'd like to do something like that. And she's like, well, this is all adults. And I said, well, can I still come? And she said, well, no, it's adults. So anyway, my mother's friend, being the type of person she was, she asked the sculpting teacher if it would be okay if I came to the class. So the woman said yes. So I came. I guess they wanted to see it first. I came to sort of audit it. They wanted to see it first, what type of a person I was, if I would be disruptive to the class, or if I would really be interested, if it was just, So I came, and then they gave me a bit of clay to play with while they were all sculpting from a live model. And the teacher said, wow, she could see that I was really into it. So they told me that I could come back. So I went once a week after school. I would take the bus. It was in the evenings to a lot of the classes. And, I just started sculpting then. And then I carried that on for years. And sometimes they would have them on the weekends. But it was something I really enjoyed, and I continued it through high school into university, and worked with this woman. Her name was May Marks, who was a sculpting teacher, and something, obviously it wasn't the most lucrative to have a career as it, but I really enjoyed it. But I studied fine arts, art history. I got an art degree. And so to actually make money, I was leaning towards a job probably in art restoration or, medical illustration, which is something they probably, do now all by computer. But, back then in the late 70s, early 80s, people were still doing it with, drawing the body parts and stuff. So that's sort of where I was leaning, and thought maybe I could get a job working for a museum, that kind of thing. So I loved films and I loved movies, but I grew up in Canada. So that I didn't have any family in the film business. So that just seemed like not a career option. There were no makeup schools, and I didn't know anybody that worked in the film business. So I sort of aspired to do something in the art field, something that, I was, enjoyed and was good at.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you were drawn to just anything artistic, just
pretty much,
straight away. Yeah.
I think a lot of times people, have a tendency to, if they're naturally good at something, then they'll put more energy into it,
Yeah.
So
So how does doing fine art, thinking about going in those possible directions, and then do you end up going and working for a museum or anything like that? Or does makeup kind of...
After I finished art school, I pretty much, like anybody that's 20 years old, you just grab whatever jobs you can get,
Yeah.
So, there was, lists as long as my arms to get in. And they had sort of at some of the museums in Canada, they had somewhat of an apprenticeship program with certain people you could try to do for art restoration. But I mean, you kind of just want to get in anywhere. And
Yeah.
I applied to some places in New York, even though I didn't have my papers to work there, but I thought, I was a very good student, so I thought maybe scholastically they might figure out a way to find a spot for me, or if I could fill some kind of, area that they didn't have somebody that was as good as me. Back when you're that young, you take all sorts of chances that you maybe wouldn't do as you get older. So I worked in a pharmacy for a while as a job, and I ended up selling cosmetics and whatever, working in the dispensary. And so I was around makeup then. People would ask me to do their makeup for stuff. I kind of think back and I think, why? Because I hardly ever wore any makeup. So
I was going to ask. I was going to be
I wonder what they were asking. So sitting there thinking, well, I mean, a lot of times people would have Halloween parties, and a lot of the times I would do my own makeup, and it would be something, I used to like changing myself into different characters. So, but yeah, I don't know, maybe because I worked in the makeup part of the pharmacy that they thought that I knew how to do makeup. Who knows? But at one point when I was asked to, partake in a fashion show, helping with makeup, and, I just did it for the money. It just said, and I sort of threw together a little bit of a kit. I didn't really know what to get. And then one time I went over to visit my mother, and she had a friend this is a different friend, whose boyfriend, she was talking to my mother, I could hear her telling her boyfriend was going to be doing this low budget film. So I asked her if I could work on it. And she said, well, you don't have any experience. I said, I'll do anything.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't want to go back into the pharmacy in the summer. I wanted to try another job. And I said, no matter what you pay, I'll do it. So, I mean, I think the pay was $50 a week. And it was like his movie for his, I guess he was at university, and he needed to do the film for his, what do you call it? Master's in film or something.
Okay.
And it was for graduate movie. And so that's what that was. But they were able to get some kind of a grant to pay people. So that's where I sort of got a spark and thought that this was interesting. So that's sort of how I ended up thinking, well, I bought a whole bunch of books that whatever they had available. I guess it was Richard Corson's book on makeup, just so I could read, because they said to me, you could help with props. I said, okay, that's fine. And then it ended up switching that they said, we don't have anybody to do makeup, so you're going to do makeup. And I was like, okay. And then I thought, well, I don't know how to do real makeup for, a movie. So I bought these books and looked it up, and then just kind of used common sense.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a budget to buy much. So I did have some stuff left over from working at the drugstore. So I used some of that and used some of my mom's makeup and used some friends gave me some makeup and kind of put a little kit together. And I was able to sort of, they had real actors in the movie. I never told them that I'd never done makeup before. I just sort of winged my way through it.
Wow.
But it gave me a taste of, okay, I'd like to maybe work on a film.
Yeah.
So that's where that sort of came from.
Oh my goodness. Were you incredibly nervous, or were you just like, I've got nothing to lose here, I'm just going to give it a go?
Yeah, I wasn't nervous at all. I guess what I was nervous about was just like knowing what supplies to use for what.
Right.
Because first of all, I had no money. I'm making $50 a week, and that basically covered me taking like metro and buses to get there. It was just trying to figure out what to do. I think back, no, I just acted confident. I figured, I needed to do sweat on people. So I put water in a thing and sprayed it. Those Richard Corson books were pretty good. Even though they were for the theater. And then you just have to kind of use common sense, which later in my career, even when I did low budget films, sometimes you're in a pickle and you just have to think, okay, well, they want this and I don't have this. What can I use?
Yeah.
And just sort of improvise. So that's one thing I will say that I think it made me a better makeup artist, since I didn't have formal training by classes from other makeup artists, that had schools. I kind of learned on the job. So my career started in the 80s doing extremely low budget films where I guess you have nothing to lose, because if they're not paying you a lot of money, then, they get what they get. But I always took the initiative to try to make it as professional as possible. And I always wanted to give them what they wanted. So if they wanted, brains up against a wall, I would grab, ketchup and pirate's booty and mix it together in a cup and add water and just throw it up against the wall. I just, I would try to come up with whatever the director asked for, no matter how cheesy or bad the movie was. I would, make it like it was multi-million-dollar movie.
Yeah.
So, and I actually like the problem-solving part of filmmaking as well. Like the challenge, like when you sometimes had to make stunt people match the actors, and especially if they were going to use them a lot and go fairly close. I always liked the challenge of trying to make them look as much like the person as I could. So
yeah, I think in general you have to be up for a challenge in our line of work, and if you're not, then
look at even now, look at when the last job we did together. There was there's always something, no matter how many years you've been in the business and how many tools you have and how many things you watch. There's always a challenge on every job. I'm always nervous, even now on every job I start, even if it's a commercial for one day, I'm always nervous.
Yeah.
A little bit. I never feel like, oh, I got this.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking, something could come up.
Yeah, it's so true. So when you did that very first job, how did you then figure out how to get the next one and the next one?
I found through, I guess, on somebody I knew a guy that did sound mixing, an older English guy. And I called him up and I went and, I told him I was interested in getting into the film business. Could he tell me how? You're really naive when you're young. So you just especially... And he's like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of a big one. So I just went and had tea with him, and he found me amusing, and he sort of took me under his wing to try to help me. So he gave me a bunch of names of people that had worked for the BBC and had worked for, some older makeup artists. And he said, since you're young, you'll get away with this. Just keep bugging these people.
Yeah, persistent.
So that's what I did. I just periodically, I was still going to school, and periodically would call them up and say, just checking in to see if there's any kind of a place that I can come and watch you work, wash your brushes, just, do anything.
Yeah.
Checking in, I just bugged them and bugged them and bugged them. So finally one guy, his name was Bill Morgan, he finally was he was an older British guy. He finally just was like, all right. And he let me, come with them. And we were shooting outside in the winter, and I wasn't really prepared for that, because unless I grew up in places where there was a climate. It wasn't like California, but you never stand outside all day. You go for where you have to go, and you go in,
Yeah.
So I really wasn't prepared for being outside in, January or whenever it was. But yeah, I bugged him, and he actually let me do a lot. I did the hands of the actor, and he helped me put together a little kit with a fishing tackle box. And, then he had me sculpt a bunch of stuff for him because he did a bit of prosthetics, I guess. Mm-hmm. And he paid me, $50 to sculpt. And he would show me a picture and tell me to sculpt it. And then he probably charged the company $5,000 or whatever. But I didn't care. I mean, a lot of it was so long ago. I sit there and think, I'm not sure the chronological order of everything, how it all worked, but mm-hmm. I ended up with a lot of, persistence, and interest getting a career, and just open to meeting people and open to asking people, do you have a job for me? Is there something, can I help this person? Do you know somebody that is doing anything, and then when I moved to California, I was introduced through somebody I met working on a commercial mm-hmm. to a hairdresser, Anna Lenta, who her people call her Medusa, and mm-hmm. this man, Jack, who was a first AD who's passed away. He said, I have a friend that I think you might like, and she works all the time in LA and on movies. So I was like, great. So he set it up for me to meet her for, lunch. And then she told me she was doing a low budget film called Savage Streets. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have makeup. Do I think I could handle working on something like that? I said, sure. So, I ended up working on that in LA. I think they didn't pay us our last 2 weeks of working. It was like one of those really sleazy production companies. But right. On that job, I made a lot of contacts.
Yeah.
Even though, and it was low budget, and it was non-union and everything. But I did meet some people, and then I, had a good working relationship with her. And then we went on to do so many movies together. Like after that, that was a pretty sort of lowbrow movie, but we went on to do some interesting kind of non-union movies. At that point, the union was really hard to get into. Mm. In my opinion, in the beginning, it was more of a nepotistic situation where most of the people in IATSE, a lot of them were related to each other. It was just like the grips were all from one family, and then their cousins, and then the makeup, everybody was sort of related. And then sometimes they might have a neighbor that wanted to do makeup and hair, and they would sort of help them get in the union. But it was hard to sort of get in. There were people that had jobs in the studio system, and for makeup, it was kind of, before my time, it was kind of a male-dominated field. So mm-hmm. there weren't that many women in. There weren't that many people in 706, I don't think. There were not like there is now. Yeah. So, and it was very difficult to get in the 80s. So since I worked all the time, I didn't really care. I thought, well, I'm working on decent movies. I mean, I worked with a lot of famous directors and they were non-union productions.
That's awesome that there was enough going on to kind
of... Oh, there was so much non-union stuff. Yeah. Medusa and I worked non-stop. I mean, we turned down so many jobs.
Wow.
I mean, there was so much work, but they were with like really great directors like Nicholas Roeg. We did tons of movies with him. We did tons of movies with John Schlesinger. We worked with Martin Scorsese. We worked with Penelope Spheris. We worked with on list of different people that were sort of more arty type films.
Yeah.
The guy that interviewed me from some sort of cult film website, he was interested in like a lot of the sort of B type movies I did in the 80s and some of the weird music videos I did.
Yeah.
Like, that there's cult followings for those type of movies.
Wow.
So I thought, boy, I didn't realize anybody ever saw some of the films that he was asking me about. So,
and you certainly, when you're working on it, don't think that it's going to end up with a cult following. Like you have no idea at the time.
No, like this film Cherry 2000, like it was really a bizarre movie. And the studio had a lot to do with the look of it, which I didn't really agree with in the beginning because they, the woman was supposed to be a tracker, like a, tracking criminals in the desert, and they wanted her to look like Tawny Katane in the White Snake videos. Like, she should look more like an androgynous type person, in my opinion. Like there was a lot of things that were like directed by studios just to make a movie sell rather than what made sense in the movie.
They're just making everyone look like they were in a music video or something.
Yeah, actually, in the 80s, a lot of things were influenced by music videos because the music MTV world was so popular and so new. Yeah. And a lot of things were influenced by that.
That's very cool. Do you remember what your first job was once you got into the union?
Mambo Kings.
Okay.
That movie got me into the union, actually because of Michael Ballhaus, the cinematographer who I'd worked with on many movies. They weren't happy with the makeup. Somebody else had been hired for that movie. And the director, Arnie Glimsher, who owned the Pace Gallery, it was his first movie, and they were doing makeup tests, and they weren't really happy with how they looked. And so Michael Ballhaus told him that he should use me. Well, I wasn't in the union then, so they had to go through, and I recommended Medusa to do the hair on that. And they had to go through a lot of rigmarole to get us on the movie. But luckily, I had worked with Antonio Banderas before, not on a movie, but on some little small thing that was done for Spain with Pedro Moldovar. So they could kind of say that I had worked with him before and he was one of the leads in it. So they were able to sort of put that down as a reason to have us get on the movie. I don't know what they did to get us on it, but we ended up getting on it. And we both, Medusa and I, had, done 25, 30 department head movies before. So it wasn't like, and sizable movies. So that was the first union movie that I did.
Did you notice much of a difference, or did it just feel the same as?
It pretty much felt the same. I always felt that, like, when I did movies for people like John Schlesinger or Nicholas Roeg, he always hired, like, incredible DPs, and they hired very professional costume designers, and I pretty much felt that everything seemed the same.
Yeah.
I guess you were more looked after as far as your wages, and, you would get a pension, and you would, be getting health insurance and things like that. Was a big advantage of being in the union.
Throughout your career, like your filmography is, it's huge, and you've done so many different types of projects, such a wide range. What are some standout jobs for you? What are some of your faves?
Well, I guess I can start from one of the first movies I did was After Hours, and that was such an incredible script. And we actually shot the ending 3 different times because they couldn't make up their minds, what they wanted. If they wanted, Griffin Dunn's character to go off into the horizon inside this, paper mache sculpture, or if they wanted to see him get back home, or, so they wanted to test it with the audiences. So, but it was a very well received movie. It was great to work with someone like Martin Scorsese, and Rita Ryak was the costume designer. She was really talented. Griffin Dunn was the leading actor. He was hilarious. And, we did 15 weeks of night shooting in Manhattan.
Wow.
And it was a lot of fun. It was easier to do those 15 weeks of night shooting because, we're like 23, 24 years old. You can stay up all night.
But also doing it consecutively, it's when you start early in the morning on a Monday and then by Friday you're doing a night. That really messes with your body clock.
It was consecutively. And the only hard part was on the weekends, all your friends, are not going to stay up all night with you. So we used to... Back in New York in those days, they had all those nightclubs, and they had like Odeon, that restaurant that would stay open all night, and they had Area and Danceteria and all these different sort of nightclubs. And that's what we would do. Even though it wasn't really my thing, there was nothing else to do because nothing else was open all night. So we used to all go and stay up as late as we could to just keep on that schedule.
Yeah.
But the whole movie was all shot. It was all supposed to take place in one night. So that was challenging continuity with whiskers and stuff like that. Because progressively, he had to have his whiskers start off clean shaven, and then by the end of it, have beard growth of 24 hours.
Wow.
So for one of my first jobs, that was a challenge. Keeping continuity, Polaroiding that, and they had to have it with the hair too. He got progressively distressed, and also the clothes had to get progressively distressed.
Yeah.
And we didn't shoot in order.
Right. No, of course not.
So, of course not. They tried to do it a little bit, but it was hard because of actor availability. So that was an interesting project. It was right around the time when there was a big punk movement in New York. It was fun. It's when New York was really fabulous back in the early 80s. You couldn't have been in a better place. It was just a fun time to be young and be in New York City and to be working with Martin Scorsese on a great, really artsy film. I felt very lucky. Starting off my career, that was kind of like a good sort of bump. And not every situation is like that. Mm-hmm. Another movie that I did after that I loved working on was The Bodyguard. Mm-hmm. I was a personal to Whitney Houston on that project, and that was really, really great to get to work with her. And, she sang Happy Birthday to her assistant one day, just in a room and with no, nothing. And it was just people, the grips got teary-eyed. I mean, she had the most incredible voice. Yeah. And she was a, pleasure to work with. It was great having she did, obviously, in the movie, there were a lot of musical numbers. So we had a lot of music while we were working. The same with Mambo Kings. The director, while we were doing that movie, had mambo, cha-cha, salsa music playing all day. Like Tito Puente, Celia Cruz, all that kind of music we had all day while we were working. And it really made an incredible work environment. Yeah. Like people just seemed to be happier and do a better job with music playing all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and The Bodyguard, it did amazingly well.
Oh, yeah, it did. It
was well received.
And also the music that the songs they did are still really popular to this day.
Yeah. Where did you guys shoot that?
That was all shot in Los Angeles. Okay. We went to Lake Tahoe for a week, I think. Mm-hmm. And we went to Miami for a week or 2 weeks to the old Fontainebleau Hotel just before they renovated it. But basically, it was quite a long shoot.
That's awesome.
So then after that, another favorite was the Joy Luck Club. Mm-hmm. And we shot that in San Francisco. And that spanned through, it was 4 mothers and 4 daughters and their history and their lives from the turn of the century to about 1993 or 4.
Wow.
And so that was a lot of research to do because it had to be really authentic for like weddings and funerals and a lot of the different looks. That was and we went to China for a month and a half, and that was in the early 90s. So it was like going back into a time machine. It's not like how China is now.
Wow.
So we were in little villages that had never seen Americans before or any kind of Caucasian people. So.
Did you have your long blonde hair at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, yeah, you would have stood out like a sore thumb.
Well, and the script supervisor was 6'1". Oh, and wow. When we walked out of the hotel one day, all of a sudden it was silent. All this traffic stopped and everybody looked at us. I said to her, "What are they looking at?" She's like, "I hate to tell you, but they're looking at us." I said, "Are you serious? All these people?" He said, "Yeah." Everybody stopped. It was just like if you freeze the frame of a film that you're watching.
Yeah.
And they all looked at us like they'd never, like we were aliens from another planet.
Wow.
Yeah, and then when we walked down the street to go shopping, like I could feel like people's breath. That's how close they would get to you back then. I could feel like heat by my face, and I turn around, it would be somebody, but in a very non-aggressive way, just curious like we were aliens from another planet. We went into a shop. If I was looking at something, and all of a sudden I would feel like so much heat behind me, and I turn around and there'd be like 10 people piled up looking over my shoulder to look at what I was looking at. They were so curious about what the foreigner was interested in.
Wow.
So I was like, I just laughed my head off the whole time I was in China, because it was so different, like having people looking at you like how we look at animals in a zoo. But they were really kind, and it was an incredible experience. One that's sort of like a life-changing experience, actually.
Yeah.
But working on the film was very hard because Terry Billell did the hair, and we each had one assistant, but it was like huge amounts of people. And there were some days where we were allowed to have extra help, but very rare because it wasn't a big budgeted film.
Yeah.
So,
and you're doing all these periods as well.
Oh yeah, we did we basically, sometimes there would be nobody watching the set for about half an hour because we'd be doing, the director was very specific. Wayne Wang, he was lovely, but he was really specific. So we'd be testing some of the people in the trailer, getting them ready for what we were going to shoot the next day.
Yeah.
And, sometimes there'd be like the girl that was working with me would be on the set, watching tons of people.
Wow.
That's just the way it was. We didn't have a lot of help. And most mornings we had to do all 4 mothers, all 4 daughters, almost every day.
Wow.
Just 2 of us. And then there would be maybe another 4 or 5 cast members. We did that every single day, but they never waited on us. So they had a great production designer, Don Burt, and then Amir Mokri, my friend, we had worked together before, but he was the cinematographer on the film, and he made everybody look incredible. So awesome. It was we had a lot of laughs. We did a lot of improvising, because we didn't have a lot of, Terry didn't have a lot of wigs. There was one actor where we had to do a flashback, and he and I laid a comb over hair by hair. The guy had a receding hairline, so we actually added hair by hair across his head. That took a few hours, but we didn't have a budget for anything. But
you got it done.
Yeah, we got it done, and it looked good.
That's awesome.
And I used those Mark Trainer lifts because I had to age everybody. So I used the Mark Trainer lifts on all the women for when they were younger. Yeah. And then I taped their necks, and then we did some working with the cinematographer for the aging. I think it came out pretty good.
I mean, it's pretty amazing because it's like, you're undercrewed. It's just you and maybe one other. And I'm thinking, maybe she was keeping the makeup super simple, but now you're telling me that you're using lifts and taping necks, and that's amazing.
Oh yeah, no, we had to do all those women worked together in one scene when we had to make them all young.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't just them. They were younger. So were their husbands.
Wow.
So were some other people. So we had to try to get everyone to look as young as possible. And it helped having good lighting. Yeah. And so were their daughters. I mean, some were recast for the younger and some weren't. Right. And so, we'd end up doing fringes and sometimes with the clothing and the hairstyle. And yeah, I mean, we had to, really sort of think fast and do what we could, but it was a challenge that was fulfilling. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, I mean, Terry put highlights in all the girls because they all had very black hair. So he put hair by hair highlights in their hair. So on film, it didn't look like helmets. So that was a lot of work to do. Wow. And there were just certain things like I put individual lashes on the girls one day for one of the party scenes. Well, that was the kiss of death for me. Because then they were like, oh my God, I want these. Now they kept like bugging me, you know, can we just have them for this scene? Nobody will notice. I was like, okay. You know, I said, by the end, you guys are going to have me putting full lashes all the way across.
Yeah.
So, but we all had a lot of laughs, and it was, you know, the beginning of some big careers for a lot of people.
That's very cool. Have you watched it recently?
I actually did. I watched it while you and I were in Atlanta. I watched it on, I think it was on like Netflix or something, or maybe it showed up on my TV. I can't remember, but because I was working with Amir, I thought, you know, I'm just going to watch this again and see if I still like what I did.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I look at some makeup in movies that when I was younger, I would look at how some actress had her makeup and I think, oh, I wish my hair was like that, or I wish I knew how to do my makeup like that. And I look now and I think, oh my goodness, that was so ugly. Why did I think that was great? So I just wondered if I would think that about my own work, looking back at Joy Luck Club, like if I would have thought, oh, I should have done this different or that different. And that was one of the movies I was happy with, that I didn't tear it apart and go, well, I should have done this, should have done that. I was actually pleased with what choices that we made, considering the time and everything, you know, because in the 90s, that was sort of like the, you know, the end of the shoulder pads and you know, the clothes were not the greatest. It was sort of remnants of the late 80s and 90s. And some of the hairdos were really weird. People were into scrunchies and stuff. So
like now.
Yeah.
It's all coming back, baby.
Oh, is it really? You won't catch me in one of those.
No, I'm not a scrunchie.
Yeah, the halter top scrunchies, you know, giant shoulder pads and T-shirts, leggings. So,
I can kiss it goodbye.
Yeah. And then I did a film that was a pretty gross script, just because it was too violent for my liking. But I was supposed to start on Mars Attacks, and it got pushed. So I got offered this other job, The Crow, City of Angels, and it was quite a large undertaking. So I decided, since it was also not a big budgeted film, that instead of having a key working with me, that I would see if I could find somebody else to co-department head it with me.
Yeah.
Because I needed somebody that knew how to do a lot of makeup as well. Like I needed somebody that had run their own shows, so that way we could just split the work down the middle, because there was just so much work to do.
Yeah.
So many tattoos, and then everybody had stunt doubles, and their doubles had to look like them, and every night we had just so much to do. So I'd asked John Blake to co-department head it with me, and I look back now, they actually made a book of the makeups and everything. I look back now, because it was, you know, all night shooting in LA, and I sit there, and I'm still very happy with the makeup that we did. And Candy Neal did the hair, and she did a great job, and braiding and adding little skulls into the hair and everything. It was really artistic. Great costume designer. Alex Medell was the production designer. The film, and I guess his name was Jean-Yves Escoffier was the cinematographer. He's no longer with us, but the film looked amazing. Would you want to watch it? No. But visually, it was great.
Yeah.
And, you know, we did really good work on it, I think.
Because you guys were doing, it's like a lot of tattooing and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, we did a lot of tattooing. This is before those Tinsley before the easier way of doing tattoos, which are, you know, easier being the, you know, time efficient.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Mia Kirshner, the actress, I had to do these giant angel wings on her back, and I brought in a pillow from home to have her lean on it. And then I would, you know, I think Fred Blau made the stencil. We had it, I drew it out, and then had an artist actually draw it so that it was in the right scale on a computer, so I could print it out, and then stencil it on her back, and then paint it in every night. So then, you know, we would spray it, and then I would just beg her not to take a shower. I said, please don't take a shower every night, or at least try to save your back.
Yeah.
So that way we don't have to start from scratch.
Face the shower. Keep your back out.
Yeah. You know, it was just, well, it was hard, because we were all working all night, and we're working downtown LA with smoke, and in some really, you know, this is the 90s, so it looked different down there. And there was a lot of really old warehouses, dusty, dirty, rat-infested places because they needed that look. And, the first thing somebody would want to do would be jump in the shower when they got home. So, I had to just beg her. But she was covered in tattoos. I drew a lot of them by hand.
Wow.
I mean, every single actor had tattoos on them. And like I said, and then we had to do their stunt doubles. The guy, Vincent Perez, that played the Crow, he had 2 stunt doubles because we'd had one for swinging on things and one that was a specialist on certain type of motorcycles. So we had to do the makeup. And then Iggy Pop had 2 crows fighting on his chest. And then his stunt double, we'd have to put that on. And then he had a motorcycle stunt double too. And then, so it was a lot of work. So a lot of times if we were allowed to hire somebody, we would just have somebody come in to watch the set while John and I just were in the trailer, just getting everybody ready.
Plowing through everybody.
Yeah. So, that's why, at this point in my career, when I went from those kind of shows where I did everybody for 25 years to just doing one person, I sort of feel which isn't easy either, but people seem to think it is. I look back and I think, how did we get everybody done? Because now on movies, most of them are quite heavily staffed. If you do a movie the size of The Crow, City of Angels now, you would have a department. You would have quite a few people, COVID aside, you would have quite a sizable department.
Yeah. I mean, especially with all the stunts and all the tattooing and yeah, absolutely. And then they'd still be hassling you about why is it taking so long?
Yeah, exactly. Constantly, why is it taking so long? So, on Joy Luck Club, for some reason, I don't know, I look back when watching the amount of work and I just think, how do we pull it off? Most of the movies I did in the early part of my career were not heavily crewed in our department. I did other movies that Mars Attacks, I loved working on that, though that had, we had a lot of people to help on that.
That's cool. Is that the first time you worked with Tim Burton?
Was that the first? No, I worked out with him on some videos. I did some videos for Ed Wood, and I did a bunch of music type video things with Tim Burton. So I knew Tim before I did Mars Attacks, but yeah, I really enjoyed working with him.
Yeah, I mean, and Mars Attacks, it's such a fun film to watch, so I would hope that it was fun to work on.
Yeah, well, we traveled all over the United States on that movie.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, it was all supposed to be done in L.A., and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're going to Kansas. Oh, we're going to Vegas. Well, we're going to, I can't remember. We went to a lot of different places. Oh, we went to Flagstaff, Arizona. Yeah, we went to places that they needed it to get certain type of geography for the aliens.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I mean, Alice in Wonderland was also a challenging job and fulfilling. I think that people really liked that, and that was sort of iconic. People liked the different looks that we did. It was mimicked a lot for Halloween.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited for it to see that it had been made and to see it when it came out, because that was one of my childhood stories that I loved.
Yeah, and Tim has a thing he loves, everything somebody always has blue eyeshadow. Like in Mars Attacks, the Martian girl, there's a certain kind of look that carries through into a lot of his movies. Again, Mars Attacks, for my sort of design theme, I modeled everything off of 60s TV shows in the U.S., like Gilligan's Island, and so I made Annette Bening kind of look like Ginger from Gilligan's Island. So I kind of used that as the theme. And, Tim and I are the same age. So I sort of talked to him about that's what I was going to do for the looks of a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
And he loved that.
That's awesome.
And then in Alice in Wonderland, he had specific research that he wanted us to use as our inspiration for designing the characters.
Okay.
So
that's such a cool way for him to approach it, so that there's still ideas and designs and everything coming from you guys directly, but he's just kind of showing you the way and saying, I'm in this realm, but pick and pull from this stuff, instead of him just going, this is exactly what I want, can you do it please?
Yeah. Well, he has specific things that he wants the feeling of it to be there, but then he lets you sort of take it from there. Like with Helena Bonham Carter, he wanted her to have the influence of Queen Elizabeth, Elizabeth with the high receding forehead, and Betty Davis' version of it with the sort of orangey hair. Yeah. So he wanted that feeling to come across in that sternness of that version of Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And then with the character that played the knave, Crispin Glover, he used Kirk Douglas from The Viking with the big scar across his face. He wanted him to have a scar like that.
Yeah.
And so he had some specifics like that. And then basically we did the tests. I would have the actors come in and do a lot of different tests on them. And the still photographer would come and take pictures. And I would try different looks and then take all the photos into Tim. And he would circle what he liked from each picture.
Yeah.
And that's how we came up with the looks.
Wow.
So he could sit and actually visualize and see and say, well, I like the eyes from this, but I like the lips from this, and I like the skin color from this. So, we'd sort of collaborated that way.
And then put that puzzle together.
Put the puzzle together. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, he has such
It is a very stylized look.
Yeah.
Like you can always tell a Tim Burton movie.
Absolutely.
Without even seeing that he's been the director. If you just sort of run about 10 minutes of film and have anybody watch, they can tell that he directed it.
Yeah, it's so true. And it was great to watch. And great because I was a Tim Burton fan anyway, so to be a fan of the Alice in Wonderland and then have him do it, it was just like, that was very cool.
Yeah, and the actors were all really nice.
Well, that's what you want.
So, yeah. I mean, it was a lot of work, but, it paid off.
Well, I think that's kind of your MO, it sounds like. You
do
a lot of work. Yeah. You just get in there and get through it and do it.
Those courtroom drama movies where there's very little makeup on people.
No.
So it's always was me running around with the many bags.
Yeah.
Touching people up. Though in Alice in Wonderland, I made stencils because on the Queen of Hearts, her eyebrows had to be, in the beginning I was just hand drawing them every day, and I thought, okay, I'm going to come in tired, and then one day I'm not going to be able to match them.
Yeah.
So I decided once I drew them on one morning, I just got, a stencil form and drew it on the form. And then I just made a stencil so that way I could line it up, some mornings and just do the stencil in of the shape that I had done. The same with the lips, with the heart, after hand drawing it so many times.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little stencil.
Yeah. I mean, you can so easily just end up all over the place. Couldn't you?
Well, yeah, one day you could come in and just not be able to get the little humps on the heart exactly the same. We were doing like long days sometimes. It's just because those people as well had tons of stunt doubles and everything. So it just I just thought that was something that was just going to make things go a bit faster. And, and she was already in the chair a long time having the appliances put on. And then, they had to get her hair slicked down, and there was, it was like a 2.5 hour makeup with makeup and hair.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the stencils would have made it go a little faster, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I've made my own stencils for things that I've had to repeat a lot from the beginning of my career, because that just came from my art background.
Yeah.
So if I saw that I was going to have to do something a lot, I would make a stencil. Even, before they made molds for scars and things, I would make a stencil of the shape of a scar if I had to repeat it on somebody back in the 80s.
It's just cheap and easy way to kind of just stay on top of your continuity and speed things up.
And I'm better, to tell you the truth, doing things out of the kit than I am with buying pre-made stuff and gluing it on. Even when I've had people make things for me, sometimes I'm just better with getting the latex or getting the scar material or getting the whatever and just sort of mixing blood and dirt and whatever I need to mix to get it the way I visually think it looks right, and doing it right on the person rather than dealing with edges from things. It just depends on what it is and what I'm doing. But I seem to work faster doing things out of the kit.
Well, it's probably just that artist
Well, just because
background, isn't it?
I spent years doing that, so I can just do it faster.
That's very cool. Now, you have been, as on top of doing all of that and much more, then you've gone into being a personal for quite a few actors as well. So how did that transition kind of come along?
Back in the 80s, I was a personal for Leslie Ann Warren on quite a few TV movie kind of things.
Okay.
And I think that it was just because she had asked for it, that to have a personal, and then she asked me to do it. So I don't know the reasoning why they let her do it.
Oh, you don't need to question that, I don't think. You just go with the flow and go, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. They let her do it, so I took that position. And then after I did Pacific Heights, Melanie Griffith was going to England to do a movie called Shining Through. And she asked to have her own makeup and hair people. So that's when I went to England. That was 1990.
Okay.
And I went there to just was a personal to her. Then after that, I'd been a personal to her a few times, but then I, was asked to be a personal for Emma Thompson and for people at different times. So
yeah, I mean, I had a little nosy through your IMDb, and it's Emma Thompson, Annette Bening, Melanie Griffith, as you said, Kim Basinger,
Kim Basinger, for a lot of people, Jessica Alba. I did like a lot of different people. Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So my IMDb, I've gone on IMDb 3 times now, correcting it, and a lot of my credits are wrong because they have me as a key. That's what they used to call the department head.
Yeah, they kind of need to update, don't they?
Key, and they used to call, or just makeup. Mm-hmm. They never called it department head. So, I wrote to them and I told them key now is usually the second makeup artist or the assistant department head. But I was the department head on all these movies. Can you please change it? Yeah. So it doesn't seem like they're going to do it. So
one day, lady, we can only hope.
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah. But I was a personal to, a lot of women and men, for many years.
Yeah.
I worked with Dustin Hoffman for about 12 years.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Warren Beatty, I was personal to him and department heading the movie. So that was a challenge.
Yeah.
Annette Bening on quite a few projects. Leslie Mann. I would have to look at my IMDb to remember all the different people. But
yeah, there's a good couple of handfuls there. You've been a busy lady.
Minnie Driver, but Julia Louis-Dreyfus was real. I did a TV series with her and did tons of photo shoots and commercials and everything. She was probably one of the most fun people I ever worked with in my whole career. It's like, actually it was hard to do her makeup without laughing. I just said to her, don't talk to me now while I'm doing it, because we'd both start crying. We'd be laughing so hard. She was just a delight.
Yeah. That's always so awesome to hear, because she is so wonderful to watch on screen. So
she's just as wonderful in real life.
Yeah, that's
she really
cool.
is. She's smart. She's, involved in so many different great things with the environment and politically, and she's a kind person, but she's hilarious.
Oh, that's
she
so
really
cool.
is. And she's just such a talent. But I mean, I've been lucky. Most of the people I've worked with, Annette Bening, I've worked with a lot, and she's really a good actress and very professional, and makes some interesting choices film-wise. Like a lot of the smaller movies she does are really fabulous. Like The Kids Are All Right. I did a bunch of those tier indie movies with her, and they were all, my paycheck wasn't very big, but the quality of the work was excellent.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you are being a personal, what do you think is important to remember just in that position?
Well, it's important when you're a personal for whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to remember.
I just put that down to try for humor.
Yeah,
but basically, you're also a reflection of that person. So you have to behave properly. You have to, look after that person. You're responsible for collaborating with them on the look. Mm-hmm. Your timing to be accurate, getting them to the set, looking after them on set, their continuity, and, just being as professional as possible.
Yeah.
You still have to basically break down the script and break down, you're just doing it for one character as opposed to, 100 characters.
Yeah. It's almost, I find my brain automatically goes into thinking about the entire ensemble of cast and background and everything. And I have to keep reminding myself, no, it's just the one character. It's just the one character.
Right.
Stop thinking about everything else. So it's a nice little reprieve for a moment.
But, people think that, it's easy to work as a personal. It's not really,
it's
because you're actually, it's actually more intense because, you can't really leave to go make a phone call. Nobody to cover you on set. But a lot of the times when you are a personal to somebody, usually they're number 1, 2, or 3 on the call sheet. So they're
pretty busy,
an important part of the story. So it's really important that they equal up to everybody else in the film, that they, look as incredible. Mm-hmm. It's not as easy as people think. And you're not spread out with a bunch of people like you are when you're department heading. You're spending like 30 minutes with each person or 45 with each person. When you're a personal, you're spending, 14 hours a day with just them and you.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to give each other space and boundaries when you're working.
Yeah.
Because it's a little more intense. When you're head of department, you can somewhat design the whole look of the film with input from the director, costume designer, producers. And, you're responsible for everyone you hire to follow through the look of the film. You're responsible for everybody getting their actors ready for the set on time.
Yeah.
You're responsible for everybody following the rules of set protocol. You're responsible for the budget. You're responsible for continuity, the supplies and everything. So there's quite a lot when you're a head of department, but hopefully you're lucky to be able to get a great assistant department head that can take some of the responsibility off of you, and you can sort of divvy it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But ultimately it all comes back on you.
Yeah, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, what has been the most challenging project you've worked on so far? And it can be anything from a location to a whole project to just even one makeup application that you found extremely challenging.
Well, working in China was very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Like in mainland China in 1992, it was freezing. It was absolutely freezing cold and no toilets. I actually made the producer fly over a camping toilet. He thought I was being a real diva. I said, look, where we're going in Guilin, there's no bushes to go behind to go to the loo. And I've been told that it's really primitive there. And so guess what? When we were in mainland China and people had to go to the bathroom, who was the first person that wanted to use my toilet? Him, because it was totally flat. And
you're like, $5 a go.
That's what I said to him. I said, you know what? There's a charge now, because I brought sheets from the hotel and I pinned it around inside the makeup bus, and then I packed garbage bags in my suitcase because I knew we were going to be in some remote places.
Yeah.
And also it's like really cold out. So you're not in little, jean jackets.
Yeah.
You're in down
layers and layers.
And layers and layers. So that was challenging, but at the same time hilarious. There were a lot of people from Hong Kong and mainland China working on the movie. Well, obviously Hong Kong wasn't part of China back then, so the people were a lot more sophisticated. So at the end, we had like a raffle between the costume and makeup department because everybody wanted the toilet. Then, they run into this situation all the time when they're on location.
Yeah.
So we sort of did that. And at the end of the job, I gave all my assistants, when I found out they were getting paid the equivalent to $15 a day for all the work they were doing. In Chinese money would be the equivalent to American $15.
Yeah.
I gave them each $100 in a Chinese good luck envelope.
Yeah.
And then I found out that we could have all gone to prison afterwards because they're not allowed. You weren't allowed to use American money. It's like they had to change it on the black market then. So I shouldn't have given them American money because that was a real no-no. Yeah. And they shouldn't have accepted it because if they got caught trying to change it and they said it was me, I could still be in China today. Yeah. So it was, that was just trying to be nice but being stupid at the same time. But yeah, so that was one of the most challenging locations and challenging jobs, I would say, Alice in Wonderland, due to all the new technology at that point was blue screen and green screen, but it was wall, ceiling, floor. So it did a number on your eyes. So when we were on set and had to touch people up, you could hardly see. A lot of times we had to wear special glasses that had sort of rose lenses. Oh. And a lot of the times I would just say, I'm sorry, I have to touch them up back in the trailer. You just couldn't see from all the reflection of the green. And apparently, Tim said that it affected light-eyed people more. If you had light blue eyes or light green eyes, because it would absorb the blue or green screen. I don't know. So that part, working in all that, was a little challenging.
Absolutely. And it is, I have a horrible dislike for the green color. If I see it outside of work, I'm just like, ugh, why would you have something that color?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Such a horrible shade of green. The blue is much easier to deal with.
We had that green, and they had it tarp on the ceiling, on the walls, on the floor.
Yeah.
And then
the lights on it. And
then all the tons of lights. And then they had the whole stage was like a big circle. It looked so science fiction because there was a big circle of computers everywhere.
Wow.
Those computers were giving off lights as well, different kinds of neon-y kind of lights. So yeah, it did a number on my eyes, I got to say. It was really hard to, focus on stuff. So
yeah, quite draining, I would imagine, by the end of the day. Your eyes would have needed a rest on top of just normally needing to rest.
Definitely.
And so tell me, Valli, what do you love most about what you do?
What I have loved most about my career is probably traveling and meeting all sorts of interesting people. Mm-hmm. I love watching great movies, and I love working with exciting people that have done, I've been able to work with a lot of people whose work I admired, like Milena Canonero, Colleen Atwood, Vittorio Storaro, Dante Spinotti, incredible cinematographers and costume designers, and John Slett, different directors that were fabulous. So, and some actors whose work I really admired. Mm-hmm. I got to work with them as directors and as actors. I guess that's what I've liked about my career. And also doing something artistic. Yeah. A lot of times you can't do exactly what you want to do, which is a bit of a challenge for me. I can sometimes feel a bit frustrated that I'm just not left with, just go for it kind of thing. Yeah. So that part's a challenge. But I guess it becomes challenging, too, to try to listen to what somebody wants and give them what they want.
Yeah. To be able
so
to
because you're having to look through someone else's vision for something that, if you've already read a script, you probably visualize it how you visualize it. Mm-hmm. And then when you have a meeting with the director or the production designer or the costume designer, you're having to turn off some of your preconceived ideas and look through the the vision that they're having, and you have to kind of sort of switch it off, or combine the two, or just do theirs, so that's interesting too.
Yeah, I think there's always a bit of give and take, isn't there? There's always a bit of compromise and kind of picking and choosing your battles and all that type of stuff.
I also like it when someone like Wayne Wang was very specific, and I like that. And like Michelle Pfeiffer is very specific, so it's good. Then there's no gray areas. Like you just they tell you what they want, and then you can do it. It's not like you're just sort of grabbing at things and thinking, is this going to please them? Are they going to like this? Are they going to like that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there's so many directions you could go in that it could be quite exhausting to try and figure out which way to go.
You just never find, you're just guessing and guessing because they don't know what they want. So it's actually quite helpful if people have an idea what they want and then let you execute it.
Yeah.
To the best of your ability, anyway.
Yeah. And what changes have you noticed in the industry since you started? Like, what are some of the bigger changes, do you think?
Well, I feel it's become more corporate and less artistic. I mean, branding over art.
Yeah.
Instagram likes over artistry. Speed is everything.
Yeah.
They don't want to spend time testing and working out looks and designing looks, not just makeup looks, just everything to do with the film. Like when you look at old footage back before I was even doing makeup, they put a lot of time into testing, and they did in some of Tim Burton's earlier movies, like Mars Attacks, we had a lot of tests on. I know on his Batman movies, they did a lot of testing, and they did a lot of, in every area. They don't like doing that so much now. Everything's like, I find that the movement of movies, the movies that I like to work on usually are the ones I don't make any money on, are the movies that have a great story and great dialogue. People really aren't interested in that anymore, unless you're fortunate enough. Like in the UK and in Europe, they still do a lot of the big period films, which I love. And they do a really good job of it over there.
Yeah.
They do the makeup and the hair and the costumes and everything, and the sets are perfect.
Absolutely.
But in the U.S., they seem to do more of the action films that are like big video games. And it seems to be more about sensation and not about words, and about profit.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess everything is always done for profit, but there used to be people were more interested in people being proud of how smart their movie was, and then how it made people think. It might make people change something in their lives, or it would show, relationships between people, show family dynamics, show times in history.
Yeah.
Now, it just seems different. I don't think it'll ever go back to the other way. It seems like they only want to do those films that I like as the real tier, lower budget films.
Right. Yeah, I guess, well, that's where it's coming into the profit thing, isn't it? Because they just want to give the money to the films that are going to bring it back to them.
Right, and they actually package people together. Oh, this person's a hot commodity. They've got a lot of Twitter followers, a lot of Instagram followers. They're like, their last movie made, $50 billion. Let's put this person with this person. They don't do the screen tests that they used to do. And, it's a different time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm sure it'll keep evolving into something else, but as you say, it may not go back.
Yeah, it won't go back to the artsy movie. There'll still be arty movies, but I just don't really like those big video game movies. They're not my thing. Yeah. I like working on smaller projects. And I mean, the project that you and I just did, that was good because it was well written.
It's telling a story. So educating, because it's based on history, which is cool.
It just I feel like it's sort of lost some of the art. It's more about commerce, like I said.
Yeah.
And it's,
well, there's a lot of people that love them, though, Valli, so that's why they're doing so well.
Most people.
Yeah.
Most people love them.
Yeah.
That's why they make them like that. And I don't poo-poo them to stop making it. It's just you asked what I thought was different, and that's not my taste, but it's most people's taste. It's just not mine.
So what would you like to see change in the future?
Well, I would like them to not lose the art.
Yeah.
That's all. The art of filmmaking and the sort of artistic, the good scripts, the good stories.
Yeah.
I'd like that to stay.
Yeah. So what have you worked on recently that we can look out for?
I just recently completed with you, The First Lady with Michelle Pfeiffer.
And she's playing Betty Ford. So
yes.
That was awesome. As we were talking about that before, I think what I really enjoyed about reading that script is actually just finding out about Betty Ford, because I really didn't, being the foreigner that I am and not knowing American First Lady history, that was really eye-opening to me. And by the end of reading it, I thought she was a bit of a rock star.
Yeah, totally a rock star.
Yeah.
Plus, I thought it was really well written. I mean, that script didn't take me very long to read at all.
That was a good read.
It just, it was real. I thought that it was quite well done. Michelle did an incredible job.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I think I just watched what you did before that. You were on the Kaminsky method before.
Oh,
that,
yeah,
right?
that's right. Thanks for reminding me. Yes, I did. I looked after Michael Douglas on the Kaminsky method.
Yeah, I just
final season.
Oh, it is it is. I felt like it was the final season. I smashed through it quite quickly because I enjoy watching it, so it's easy to watch a couple of episodes at a time. They must have been fun.
It was really fun. He was a pleasure to work with. I've known him for about 35 years. We worked on many movies together, but I actually had never done his makeup before.
Oh, wow.
So the makeup artist wasn't available to do him, so they asked me if I'd look after him. And but I already knew him for a long time. So he played the love interest to many of the actresses I worked with on many movies. Or I think when I did Kate Hudson, he played her father.
Okay. Yeah,
he was a pleasure. He's really professional, and he's so good at that character.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah, it was a really, really fun project to work on.
Now, a question that I ask everybody is, you're in your trailer, you've got all your bits and pieces, all your tools, your makeup, all that type of stuff, you're set up, and I walk in the morning and I take one thing away from you. What would that one thing be that would stress you out? And you'd be like, no, Jamie, I can't work without that.
My glasses.
Your glasses. Those damn blue screens.
Yeah. I would definitely need my glasses now, though I never used to. I used to lay on individual lashes like on Joy Luck Club. I just go across people, no glasses, just grab them out of the thing, no tweezers, just plunk them on. Now, if I didn't have my glasses. But if you took something that I feel like there's, for men, one thing I would need would be nose hair trimmers.
Oh, yeah.
So if I was doing a man and you took my little scissors that I have that are for trimming the nose hairs that have protection on the back, so that might be difficult.
Okay.
For women, one thing that I do use a lot on everybody is my Shuamura eyelash curler.
Okay, it's a favorite.
So,
do you have more than one? Do you have a backup in case something happens?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, good. Pleased to hear it.
So I have a lot of weird little tools that I've kind of made myself for when I'm doing eyelashes. That, like, I remember when I worked on Lemony Snicket, my key was just cracking up because I made this tool. It was an old makeup brush that was an old Visiora makeup brush, and I had filed the bottom of the brush to a point, but it was a perfect point. And the front of the brush, where it used to have maybe 5 or 6 hairs coming out of it, most of them had dropped off. I had taken the top of that brush without the hairs and bent it in a certain shape that I guess it had 2 little hairs in it, and then I bent it in a certain shape. Well, it was the most perfect tool for me to use for fake eyebrow applications and little teeny mustache applications. So I had a lot of that on Lemony Snicket. Yeah. And I forgot about that movie. Anyway, I couldn't find it one day. It disappeared. So I panicked. So everybody in the trailer was looking for this little brush. And it was and Timothy Spall, one of the actors, he was helping us look, and he goes, what exactly is it? And when I explained to him, he's like, oh my God, we're looking for something like that. And I said, but you don't understand.
Yeah.
Out of all the brushes I have, this is my favorite one.
Yeah.
For this job. It just helps me so much. It makes my job so easy.
Yeah.
And we eventually found it. He's like, couldn't you make another one? I said, I don't know. It was the luck of the draw that it got bent in such a perfect position. And we ended up finding it. But that was one of those things where it cost zero. You know, most people would have binned it.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the perfect little tool to use for that film.
I love that. I feel like everybody has one of those items in their kit that they've it's not really used for what it's intended for, and it's been bashed around so much and kind of modified slightly to help you do something. And if you lose it, you're like, wow.
Yeah, because I made some eyebrow brushes, and I have some dental equipment that I actually use for when I'm putting on false eyelashes. So I guess it depends on the job. So if I was on a job where I was doing a lot of lash stuff and you took away a certain few little products that I've made for that, I'd have a meltdown.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it just depends on, and like on that particular job, I had all these kind of weird little curly mustaches and extra long eyebrow hairs and things. And that tool was so perfect for it.
Yeah, just delicate little pieces.
It was a stupid little tool, but it was perfect for that job. and it was just like, you know, it wasn't one of those things, well, I can just buy another one.
Yeah, so, one of a kind.
Yeah.
And who would you like to hear on the podcast?
Who would I like to hear on the podcast? There's a couple makeup people that I think that are really, that you haven't interviewed yet that maybe you don't know. One is Richard Dean, who's a New York makeup artist. Okay. He worked on the Cotton Club and on, you know, a lot of different, he worked on Dick Tracy and a lot of different movies. Yeah. And Erwin Kupitz would be a good person to listen to as well, who made all my facial hair and wigs for years. Okay. He's very good at his job. And then a guy, Waldemir Pokromsky, who I worked with on Perfume, who has done so many fabulous movies in Eastern Europe. Yeah. He's a great makeup and hair designer. Though he probably might need an interpreter, because I don't know how great his English is. But
where's he from?
He lives in Poland. Okay. But he works in Germany, Poland, different bordering towns on former USSR. You know, he works all over the whole of Eastern Europe, Prague. And he worked on Schindler's List and Perfume and a lot of movies that you might have seen, Polish films that are really great. Yeah. One of his movies was up for an Oscar a couple years ago. He's talented.
That's awesome. Yay. Well, Valli, I would like to thank you 1,000 times over for spending the time with me today and telling me your journey.
You're welcome. It was enjoyable. I hope that I hope people find it interesting. I don't know.
Oh, lady, you're too funny. For links to see more about our guests, go to our Instagram at The Last Looks Podcast or our website, thelastlookspodcast.com. If you want to keep up with new episodes being released, be sure to subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, or any podcast streaming platform. And remember, if you're enjoying the show, share it. The Last Looks Podcast would like to thank Brett Stanley and Sabrina Castro. The song Fun Time by DJ Quads. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
That's a wrap, people.